After returning my iPad Pro 2021, I fell back on my 2018 model, which has largely similar features but at a significantly lower price. And then I also managed to pick up the 2020 model, which lies somewhere in between. Now, after using these three iPads, I've started to think about what features are critical to me and what am I willing to pay extra for. Now, hopefully this video will help you make that decision as well. So without further ado, this is NOISO, and this is what is the best iPad Pro for you. iPads seem to be starting to converge on the point that MacBooks were at just a few years ago, where each individual upgrade is just an upgrade of internals and not a huge feature set upgrade. Now, I had hoped for something different with the M1 upgrade, but unfortunately we haven't seen any changes in the actual way that you use an iPad Pro. The bigger decision that you'll probably need to make is between the 11-inch and the 12.9-inch. Now, both of these are very, very well-designed devices, quite light and thin for their size, but that being said, I really think the 11-inch is a lot more optimized for tablet usage, and the 12.9-inch is really just a laptop screen without a keyboard. As I mentioned in my review of the 2021 model, I'm looking for a tablet more than I'm looking for a laptop, and so I would opt for the 11-inch more often. But that being said, when you are using this as a laptop, you might get a little bit constricted, especially with the Magic Keyboard being significantly smaller relative to the 12.9-inch model. But we'll get back to that. Both the 2018 and 2020 models of the iPad Pro come with the LCD displays, not the micro LED that you'd find on the 2021 model, notably, which only comes on the 12.9-inch. Now, in my experience, I often couldn't tell the difference between this display and the 2021 model, and so it really didn't make a big difference to me. Now, the big difference came specifically in the dark, where the black bars above and below when watching videos were actually black on the 2021 model, and they're just a dark gray on this screen, but that really didn't matter too much for me. If instead you are maybe doing some creative work on your iPad, Photoshop or maybe doing video editing, then maybe those extra black pixels matter more for you. But I didn't really care too much because I was so used to LCDs. I greatly prefer the iPad Pro's display over the MacBook Air that I use every day, just because it is so touchable. You honestly feel so much closer to the experience because you're not so far removed, and the MacBook Air still feels like it's not made to be touched, even though I accidentally touch it way too many times. Now, where the iPad Pros really differ are in specs. The newest iPad Pro has an M1 chip, 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, whereas the 2020 model has 6 gigs of RAM and an A14Z, and then finally the 2018 model has 4 gigs of RAM and an A14X. Now, in practice, the difference between the iPad Pro 2020 and the iPad Pro 2018 is pretty minimal in my experience. In both cases, I found that when I was trying to edit photos on both of them, I would switch away from Photoshop, go into a couple of other apps, and then when I went back into Photoshop, it had lost Photoshop in memory, so I had to reopen the file that I was editing. This was a frustrating thing that I didn't actually experience nearly as much on my 2021 model, which could obviously hold the file for longer in RAM. But generally, keep in mind that there is a limit, an artificial limit that is set on how much RAM usage an application can use in iPadOS. And so, for most cases, you won't be getting the full usage of that 8 or 16 gigs of RAM in a single application. While the M1 chip should come in use if you're using photo editing, video editing, or some other tools on your iPad, in most cases you won't tell a huge difference when navigating the operating system between the M1, A14Z, and the A14X. Personally, I picked both of these devices up around my house many times over, not knowing which is which and not being able to tell unless I looked specifically at the cameras on the back. Now, this is a testament to Apple's ability to make very fast and very efficient chips. A processor that's 3 years old still performs very well today. Now, in terms of benchmarks, the M1 chip is significantly faster. So if you're looking for something that will last longer into the future, then you might want to consider that. Now, by this time, I was just about ready to send my iPad 2020 away and fall back on my 2018 model. But there was one more difference that I wanted to test out, and that was the cameras. Now, the cameras on the iPad Pro 2020 are significantly upgraded over the 2018 model, and notably feature the depth sensing camera, the LiDAR camera, that is also featured on the 2021 model. Now, in most cases, the LiDAR depth sensing system still feels like a beta test or kind of a parlor trick. There are some cool things that you can do using AR thanks to LiDAR, like testing whether furniture fits in your apartment. I personally found this to be helpful recently because I'm in the process of moving. I was also able to walk around my entire apartment and create a 3D model of several rooms in my apartment using the camera, and then I want to port that 3D model over to my Oculus Quest and virtually in VR walk around my apartment again, which just seems like a very cool concept. I'll have to let you guys know how this ends up working out and whether it will be just a total mistake. But if you guys don't have a specific reason for using the LiDAR system, then generally it's kind of niche for now. I think in the future, it could be used for something, but by the time that future is here, I think just as easily you could have an iPhone 12 Pro and get the same experience without having to buy an entire iPad for that reason. Now, one downside of Apple having such great software that they push back to a lot older models is the software experience on iPad Pros is not too different between models. And so as a result, you'll get the same software experience on a 2018 model or older as you would on a 2021 model. Now, that's great for people who want to opt for older devices, but it means that the reason to get a 2021 model iPad Pro is pretty small. Now, if I had the choice, I would actually opt for the 11-inch model since I don't plan on using my iPad Pro as a computer. Generally, it's nice to be able to prop my iPad Pro, even 11-inch, on a Magic Keyboard or a Bridge keyboard and type out a quick note or a script for a video or something along those lines. But as I said in my 2021 model video, it was tough to really start using an iPad Pro as a full computer. That's not going to be the experience for everyone. I think there's a lot of people out there who only use their computers for web browsing, email, and some web-based programs that should get a huge amount of utility out of the iPad Pro. There were many people at my former company that were salespeople that started using iPad Pros over their old Dell laptops, specifically because they were a lot easier to walk around and go from customer to customer with. And they could still fill out all the forms and notably keep track of all of their data on a very portable tablet. But that's not for everyone. Now, I am the type of person that is actually really dependent on legacy software, and so Windows and Mac devices work a lot better for me. Now, a lot of the people that ask me whether they can replace their laptop with an iPad Pro are students, which makes a lot of sense because it makes it a lot easier to not have to lug a big laptop between classes. Now, my answer for them is mixed. If you know that you're not going to need any sort of legacy programs that you download traditionally, then maybe an iPad Pro is good for you. But maybe the best choice is to have a cheaper iPad or an iPad Air, and then separately have a traditional laptop that you keep closer to your dorm for most of the time. That way, when you do have to use certain applications like MATLAB, for example, you do have a laptop in order to solve those issues. Now, I don't know the best solution for most people, but for me, having an iPad Pro to take between classes would have been a great solution because often I was taking notes, I was studying for exams, and I was writing papers, which all can be pretty easily done on the iPad Pro. At the time, I was using a Surface, like not Surface Pro, but the original Surface, which generally actually covered most of the bases for me until I had to start using MATLAB. But let me know down in the comments if you're a student and you have a specific question around whether the iPad Pro makes sense for you. As for me, I'm going to be giving up my iPad Pro 2020 model because I got an iPhone 12 Pro that has the depth sensing camera. I will have to decide on whether I keep my 2018 model around because I actually really have liked using the 11-inch model again, and I might just go back to it, but we'll have to decide. If you're interested in buying my 2020 iPad Pro, look down in the description and you will get a special discount for being a viewer of the channel on my eBay page where I list it. But thanks for watching. Let me know down in the comments about what you think is the best iPad Pro for you, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya.